The first thing our protagonist did after his rebirth was spend 10 million in cash to take his best friend and the school beauty to get tattooed. For his friend, a Neza tattoo on the left arm. On the right arm, the true Lord Erlang. For the school beauty, the goddess of the 9 heavens. As for Qinlai himself, he chose Pengu creating heaven on his chest and 9 dragons pulling a coffin on his back, with Dongwang Tai on his left leg and the great sage equal to heaven on his right. He even mortgaged 300 million to buy an abandoned air raid shelter deep in the mountains. Everyone mocked him as a profligate loser, but they had no idea that in 20 days, the apocalypse would arrive. At that time, the world's flora and fauna will mutate wildly. Docile pets will become bloodthirsty beasts, and roadside plants will turn into meat grinders. Humanity will instantly plummet to the bottom of the food chain. Only those with tattoos can awaken the extraordinary power of the totems. With exactly 20 days left before the red moon descends, Qinlai didn't hesitate for a second and called his lawyer immediately. He instructed lawyer Zhang to immediately mortgage his billion-dollar shares, real estate, and luxury cars to an international underground bank. Yes, all of it. He only wanted cash. Even at a 30% fire sale price, he needed to see 300 million sitting in his account within 24 hours. After hanging up, he quickly dialed 2 more numbers. Half an hour later, we find them at the city's most secretive underground tattoo parlor, the Ghost Mansion. His best friend Su Xiaodao and the famously cold school beauty Jiang Xini stood there in utter shock after being dragged along by him. Brother Lai, are you crazy? You mortgaged the entire family fortune just to bring us here for tattoos. Xiaodao asked. Xini added, Qin Lai, what are you doing? If you're doing this because Zhao Yuqing broke up with you, there's really no need to go this far. To be honest, she had a point. Qinlai looked at them with a seriousness they had never seen before. Xini, Xiaodao, there's no time to explain. If you still trust me, just listen to me today. Looking into his eyes, so solemn, they seemed almost like strangers, the two of them finally gritted their teeth and agreed. He turned to the scarred tattoo master and slammed a bank card containing 1 million onto the table. Master, I have a big job for you. He pointed to Su Xiaodao. Give my brother Neza on his left arm and the true Lord Erlang on his right. Then he looked toward Jiang Xini. Give her a full back tattoo of the goddess of the 9 heavens. A flicker of complexity crossed Xini's cold eyes. Qinlai, when did I ever agree to let you make decisions for me? He looked at her, his voice dropping an octave. This time, I won't let you die. Xini's pupils contracted slightly at those words. She had no idea what those words meant, but our protagonist remembered how Jiang Xini had died saving him in his past life. When he finally found her in that beast's nest, only half of her bloodstained school uniform remained. This time, he would protect her. The master tattooist glanced at the bank card and took it. Fine, and what about you? Qinlai removed his shirt, revealing a lean, muscular frame. He spoke slowly, with absolute conviction. On my chest, Pengu creating heaven. On my back, 9 dragons pulling a coffin. Left leg, Dongwang Tai. Right leg, the great sage. The master's tattoo machine clattered to the floor in shock. He looked at Qinlai as if he were a madman. Kid, do you have a death wish? Pengu is already a forbidden destiny. And you want the 9 dragons? That isn't just a myth. It's a forbidden, ominous design that buries all living souls. Qinlai simply gave a cold laugh. I'll add more money. If 1 million isn't enough, I'll give you 10. I want you to handle the needles personally. The others can assist you, but it must be finished within 7 days. The master's face paled. 7 days? You're insane. A piece this size is impossible in a week. Qinlai pulled a list from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. It contained military-grade jade gel, bionic repair patches, imported anesthetics, and anti-infection drugs. I've prepared everything. You just focus on the ink. I'll handle the pain myself. The old master stared at him intensely. He remained silent for a full 30 seconds before finally leaning down to retrieve his machine. His voice was raspy. Fine. I've spent a lifetime tattooing gods, but I've never seen anyone as crazy as you. This job, I'll take it. 3 days later, we find ourselves deep in the mountains outside Jiangzhou City at an abandoned underground base codenamed Black Rock. On the surface, it was a Cold War air raid shelter later converted into a high-security prison, but he knew its true identity. It was a sealed underground command post from a bygone era. The main structure, power wells, ventilation, and water systems were all still intact. He wasn't just buying a shelter. He was restarting, reinforcing, and completing its defensive weapon systems. To be honest, it was an ambitious plan. During those 3 days, he only visited Black Rock once to sign the contracts and verify the structural integrity of the energy and ventilation systems. He left the rest to his lawyers and construction teams. After all, the most time-consuming part wasn't buying a base, but the ink on his skin. The real challenge wasn't the base, but the 4 forbidden totems on his skin. Are you sure you want to spend 30 million on this wasteland? The real estate agent wiped cold sweat from his brow, staring at Qinlai. In Jiangzhou, he was a famous spendthrift, but now he wanted to buy and renovate. With a bold flourish, he signed the contract. Contact the best security and construction teams in the country. I want this done in 10 days. He planned to turn this place into a doomsday fortress that not even a fly could enter, complete with 5-meter-high military-grade alloy walls. He ordered million-ton explosion-proof doors, a top-tier ecological cycle system, and the restoration of the sealed underground energy core. He produced a massive stack of cash, ready to pour it all in within 10 days. Money was no object. He offered triple wages for 24-hour shifts. As his orders were issued one by one, the entire construction industry in Jiangzhou was sent into a frenzy. Meanwhile, we find him elsewhere. Qin Lai sat shirtless in the deepest private room of the Ghost Mansion tattoo parlor. Dim yellow light flickered against the cold walls. The walls were covered in strange, eerie totem designs, and the air was thick with the sharp scent of disinfectant mixed with tattoo ink. The old master handled the needles himself, while 3 apprentices assisted by mixing colors, sketching lines, and wiping the skin clean. On his back, the outline of the first black dragon for the 9 dragons pulling a coffin was complete. Even without its eyes, it felt suffocating. Nearby, Su Xiaodao sat gritting his teeth in pain as the Neza tattoo on his left arm took shape. Jiang Xini was in the next room. In her private booth, a female artist worked on the intricate details of the 9 Heavens mystic maiden. Qin Lai's phone sat nearby, buzzing constantly. Messages from lawyers, agents, construction teams, and suppliers flooded the screen. He endured the sharp bite of the needles into his skin. While managing the pain, he remotely issued commands. The renovation of the Black Rock base was progressing in perfect sync with his tattoos. Neither the ink nor the fortress could be delayed. He casually swiped his phone, and a breaking news notification popped up on the screen. Shocking. Wealthy heir sells all assets to buy an abandoned prison in the mountains. He clicked on a streaming app and entered the top-ranked room. It was his rival, Su Rue, the son of Jiangzhou's richest man. The broadcast showed him sitting in a luxury villa in the city center. Su Rue swirled a glass of red wine, laughing so hard he could barely stay upright. Qin Lai, what happened to you? Did you lose your mind? Su Rue continued his mockery, clearly enjoying the spectacle. To be honest, he had no idea just how much he would soon regret those laughs. It's a relief I saw through his madness early on, a familiar voice sneered. I dumped him and came straight to you. Zhao Yuqing continued, mocking how Qin Lai had dragged the elegant Jiang Xini to get covered in gangster-style tattoos. As the camera shifted, we see a red floral tattoo on Yuqing's waist, vivid as blood. Qin Lai's gaze turned cold. In his past life, she never had that tattoo. She was clearly working hard to please Su Rue this time around. Su Rue shouted excitedly at the camera, asking his followers if they could believe Qin Lai's latest bout of insanity. He claimed Qin Lai wasn't just wasting money on a mountain hole, but spending millions on massive orders of pork and rice. He's planning to live there forever. Su Rue laughed, causing the livestream chat to explode with mockery and disbelief. Users joked that wealth had broken Qin Lai's mind, while others mourned that their goddess, Jiang Xini, was following him. The consensus online was clear. Qin Lai had lost it and belonged in a mental hospital, not a mountain fortress. Watching the wave of insults, Su Xiaodao trembled with rage. Brother Lai, that bastard Su Rue is inciting a mob against you. I'm going to find him and settle this, Xiaodao growled. But Qin Lai simply felt the needles piercing his skin. He watched Su Rue's arrogant face with calm eyes. The higher he jumped now, the harder he would fall later. Xiaodao, keep your eyes on the supply convoys, he commanded. Our doomsday fortress cannot have a single flaw. 7 days had passed since his rebirth. In all that time, he had barely stepped out of this dim underground room. The master and his 3 apprentices worked in shifts, sketching by day and tattooing through the long, silent nights. To speed up the process, he even sourced military-grade healing gels and bionic repair patches from the black market. As each totem was finished, the gel sealed the wound. Without it, his skin would have simply given up long ago. Late on the 7th night, the buzzing of the tattoo machines finally went silent in the depths of the ghost mansion. Xiaodao's Neza and Erlingshan tattoos were finished days ago, and Jiang Xini's Mystic Maiden was completed yesterday. Now, the 4 forbidden totems on Qin Lai's own body were finally complete, stretching from his chest to his back. The 9 dragons' coffin on his back, Dongwang Tai, and the Great Sage on his legs. Master Guifu finally pulled off his gloves. He looked at the patterns on Qin Lai's body and exhaled slowly, admitting that in a lifetime of tattooing, he'd never seen such work. To be honest, he had never taken on such a massive job: bone carving, heaven opening, the 9 dragons, and the ancient sovereigns. He claimed that with this set, no one in the entire Jiangzhou tattooing circle would ever dare to challenge his skill again. As Qin Lai sat up, we see the 4 forbidden totems covering his chest, back, and legs, every line sharp and ancient. The lines felt heavy and old, especially the 9 dragons on his back, where black dragons coiled upward along his spine. Their scales were layered perfectly, with 9 dragon tails converging at the center of his back to pull an ancient black coffin. Star rainbow chains wrapped around the coffin. Though it was just a tattoo, it radiated an indescribable sense of overwhelming pressure. Xiaodao circled around him and swallowed hard, remarking that if he hadn't watched it being inked, he'd fear it might move at night. Qin Lai dressed to hide the totems, knowing that for now, they were just ink. They would only truly wake when the red moon arrived. Xiaodao was confused by the mention of a red moon, but Qin Lai didn't offer an explanation just yet. He simply checked the time. Only 12 days remained until the red moon. It was time to inspect the Blackstone base. 2 hours later, they arrived at the remote mountains of Jiangzhou, where the underground fortress known as Blackstone had been transformed. The underground ventilation, the power core, and the ecological recycling systems had all been successfully restarted and tested. Over the next 12 days, he barely rested, personally overseeing the final modifications to the Blackstone base every single day. At night, he used his soul power to suppress the backlash of the 4 forbidden totems as truckloads of supplies arrived continuously. Rice, flour, fresh meat, canned goods, drinking water, medical supplies, and diesel fuel were all funneled into the mountain depths. He bought out everything, heavy off-road vehicles, backup generators, and military-grade protective gear, until the markets were empty. The outside world was convinced he had lost his mind, but he knew that time for the civilized world was running out. On the day before the Red Moon, the final batch of supplies was moved into the Blackstone base's massive storage vaults. Frozen meat, medicine, diesel fuel, backup generators, and military-grade protective gear were piled high, filling 3 entire floors. The underground warehouse was packed to the brim, and Xiao Dao stood at the entrance, staring with wide eyes at the sheer scale of it. He joked that Qin Lai was planning to live down here until his next life, while Jiang Xini watched the scene in silence. She had known he was stockpiling supplies, but seeing this underground fortress overflowing with resources was something else entirely. Frowning, she asked what he was really preparing for, but Qin Lai didn't answer immediately as he walked to the center of the room. He slowly raised his right hand, and a second later, the ground seemed to tremble as the 3-story mountain of supplies, thousands of tons of resources, vanished into thin air. In just 1 second, the packed warehouse became completely empty. Only the heavy indentations on the floor and the lingering scent of diesel and grain remained in the vacant space. Xiao Dao froze in place, blinking and rubbing his eyes before rushing into the center of the warehouse in utter disbelief. He circled the empty floor 3 times before spinning around to face Qin Lai, his voice cracking with shock. He demanded to know where it all went, unable to process how thousands of tons of goods could disappear in the blink of an eye. He accused Qin Lai of playing a magic trick, while Jiang Xini's reaction, though less explosive, showed she had lost her usual composure. Her usually cold and calm eyes were filled with confusion as she walked up to him and stared at his right hand. She asked him what was actually happening, and after a moment of silence, he realized there was no longer any point in hiding it. With less than 24 hours until the Red Moon, they needed the truth. He explained that this was a spatial dimension. He told them it was linked to the changes in his body, though he still didn't reveal the full truth about his rebirth. He felt that saying too much now would only add to their psychological burden, so he focused on the practical details. He explained that the space could store massive amounts of supplies where time stood still, meaning food would never rot and medicine would never expire. Fuel, weapons, and gold could be kept there indefinitely. Xiao Dao's mouth hung open as the realization finally hit him. He realized the supplies weren't meant for the warehouse, but were intended to be carried with them. He wondered what else was being hidden. We see Qin Lai finally break the silence, telling them that tomorrow night, the Red Moon will descend upon the world. At midnight tomorrow, the moon in the sky will turn a blood-red color, and immediately afterward, a thick black mist will surge from the ground to engulf the entire globe. Every animal and plant will undergo a frantic, terrifying transformation. Cats and dogs will turn into man-eating monsters, and even the plants will begin to devour the living. Cities will lose all order within hours, and human civilization as we know it will be completely transformed overnight. A deathly silence fills the warehouse. Xiao Dao's lips tremble, but this time, he doesn't immediately make a joke. The sight of thousands of tons of supplies vanishing into thin air has completely shattered his common sense. Jiang Xini, too, does not argue. She simply stares at him, asking for proof. He tells her that what she just saw was the first piece of evidence. The second piece is the tattoos on their bodies. Jiang Xini subconsciously looks down at the ink she now carries. He explains that the Red Moon's energy will activate these tattoos, turning them into true totems and spiritual manifestations. Ordinary patterns only awaken low-level physical enhancements, while fierce beast patterns can awaken animalistic transformation abilities. However, deified totems can awaken true divine manifestations. The more ancient and complete the totem is, the stronger the destiny it carries, and the more terrifying the power will be after awakening. Xiao Dao finally begins to understand. He asks if Qin Lai gave him the Neza and Erlangshan tattoos just so he could survive. Yes, and they are top tier. Deified totems. If he can survive the Red Moon's awakening, he will be stronger than the vast majority of survivors. Then, Qin Lai turns to Jiang Xini. Her 9 Heavens Xuannu is a high-level manifestation capable of offense, defense, purification, and battlefield coordination. In the coming world, poisonous creatures and mental erosions will become common. Her totem will be absolutely vital. She realizes now that selling his assets, buying the Blackstone base, stockpiling supplies, and getting them tattooed, none of it was a whim. He knew something massive was coming all along. And he was right, of course. The shock on Jiang Xini's face slowly fades, replaced by a sharp tension, while Xiao Dao's gaze also turns serious. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Xiao Dao suddenly panics, asking about his parents who are still at the repair shop in the south of the city. Qin Lai tells him not to worry, and then we see him pull up a live video feed. It is a real-time broadcast sent back by a transport team. A black armored business vehicle is pulling up outside the old street in the south. The doors slide open with mechanical precision. Two bodyguards in black tactical gear escort a middle-aged couple into the car. The man is short, his skin darkened by years of labor. His hands are stained with the stubborn oil of a mechanic. Watching the screen, Xiaodao's eyes instantly turn red with emotion. Qinlai explains that he used the excuse of needing maintenance and logistics personnel for the Blackstone base. He contacted them early. They have no idea about the coming apocalypse. They simply think they were hired for a high-paying job. The convoy will arrive in 20 minutes. Xiaodao's lips tremble, but he can't find the words to speak. In his previous life, after the Red Moon descended, Xiaodao risked everything to save them. But the old street had already been overrun by mutated swarms. In the end, he only found his father's broken wrench and the old apron his mother refused to throw away. From then on, Xiaodao became a cold-blooded killer, a man possessed, until he finally died in the beast tide. This time, Qinlai won't let that happen. Qinlai pats his shoulder, promising that in this life, he will bring them back safely. Xiaodao bows his head, his shoulders shaking. After a long moment, he looks up with bloodshot eyes and whispers his thanks. Qinlai simply offers a small, knowing smile. Jiang Xini watches this scene in silence before asking in a low voice about her own father. He is currently very safe. She is surprised he knows. Her father, Jiang Qingyuan, is an academician of energy research. Half a month ago, the military whisked him away to a secret underground base in the capital for a top-level energy core project. It is one of the safest places on Earth. As for her mother, Qinlai pauses. Jiang Xini's mother passed away years ago, a wound that has never quite healed. She doesn't press for more, simply nodding in understanding. Qinlai looks at them both, his voice turning heavy and serious. He declares that from this moment on, Blackstone Base is on total lockdown. No one is to leave. Xiaodao takes a deep breath. Xiaodao takes a deep breath and nods, while Jiang Xini slowly presses her hand against the Nine Heavens Goddess tattoo on her back. We see Qinlai look up toward the night sky. Outside the base, the darkness is absolute. Everything is ready, and all that remains is for the storm to break. The next morning, in the underground living area of Blackstone Base, Xiaodao's parents have already been settled into the safest living quarters. Su Jingwo, a former soldier in his youth, might not know exactly what is coming. But after seeing the defensive specifications of Blackstone Base, he immediately senses that something is wrong. He doesn't ask many questions, however. He simply pats Xiaodao's shoulder and tells him to work hard for President Qin. Meanwhile, Li Guilin has been busy in the kitchen all morning. She insists on making a pot of dumplings for everyone. Xiaodao eats until his eyes turn red with emotion, yet he keeps a smile on his face. To be honest, it's a bittersweet sight. With the apocalypse looming, a hot, home-cooked meal is a luxury that most people can only dream of. Last night, Qinlai moved the final batch of supplies into his subspace. The final 10-ton alloy gate of Blackstone Base was completely sealed at dawn. Now, the entire underground fortress is brilliantly lit. The underground energy core, dormant for years, is running perfectly. On the monitoring screens, we see a 360-degree view of the outside world with no blind spots. Xiaodao sits nearby, clutching a bowl of dumplings while watching the monitors. Jiang Xini stands before the giant screen, checking the external defense systems. The Nine Heavens Goddess tattoo on her body has fully settled. Her cold, elegant aura now carries a hint of an indescribable, sharp edge. Just then, a local news notification pops up on Qinlai's phone. It seems Su Rue has started another livestream. In the video, Su Rue is still in his luxury villa in the city center, hosting an incredibly decadent party. It is quite the spectacle, really. Under the crystal chandeliers, there are champagne towers, music, beautiful women, and wealthy heirs, making the entire stream look like a scene of pure indulgence. Qinlai glances at the time. There is less than an hour left before the red moon descends. On screen, Su Rue puts his arm around Zhao Yuqing and mocks the camera. He tells his followers to look at the madman Qinlai, who he assumes is currently hiding in some mountain air raid shelter. He laughs at how Qinlai sold his assets to buy rice and pork, even dragging Jiang Xini along to get tattoos. He asks if Qinlai truly believes the world is ending. Zhao Yuqing leans into his arms, laughing hysterically. She tells Su Rue that she actually wants to see how Qinlai handles the aftermath tomorrow. Su Rue swirls the red wine in his glass, his laughter becoming even more arrogant. He declares that if nothing happens tonight, he will take a crew into the mountains tomorrow to smash Qinlai's pathetic shelter and personally send him to a mental institution. In the livestream, the mockery and jeers swell into a full-blown carnival of ridicule. Yet inside Blackstone Base, the atmosphere is quite different. It is so quiet that the only sound is the low hum of the energy core. Qinlai lifts his wrist to check the time, 11:59 p.m. 50 seconds. Only 10 seconds remain before the red moon descends. While the world outside continues its revelry, Blackstone Base remains perfectly still. The low vibration of the core is the only sign of life. 10 seconds later, the countdown hits 0, and a heavy, ancient-sounding hum resonates through the air. The entire planet gives a violent shudder. In the livestream, Su Rue's arrogant laughter comes to a sudden, jarring halt. He stares out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his villa. The bright, clear moon in the night sky has, in this single instant, transformed. It turns an eerie, blood-red color, looking for all the world like a bleeding eyeball staring down at humanity. Then, something even worse happens. A thick, impenetrable black mist erupts from the ground, instantly swallowing the entire city of Jiangzhou. People in the chat begin to panic, asking what on earth is happening. They wonder why the moon has actually turned red. On screen, Su Rue screams in terror, so distracted that he doesn't even notice his wine glass shattering on the floor. Suddenly, the purebred poodle in Zhao Yuqing's arms lets out a bone-chilling growl that cuts through the music and the noise. Under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of viewers, the small dog's body begins to swell and bloat like a balloon being pumped with air. Black fur sprouts all over its body, its eyes turn a deep crimson, and its mouth fills with rows of razor-sharp fangs. It is a nightmare come to life. The mutated creature lunges at Zhao Yuqing, its sharp claws tearing through her shoulder as it slams her entire body to the ground. The camera shakes violently as a piercing scream shatters the eardrums of everyone watching. She begs Su Rue to save her. Her face is deathly pale as she desperately reaches out a hand toward him. But Su Rue is already paralyzed with a fear that has stripped away his soul. He screams at her to stay away, frantically backing up and even kicking her hand away as he scrambles toward the stairs to the second floor. Zhao Yuqing collapses on the floor, her clothes stained red at the shoulder, her entire body trembling in shock. She cries out for Su Rue one last time. But the only response she receives is the sight of his retreating back as he flees in cowardice. The mutated beast growls and closes in again. Its crimson eyes are locked onto her. In the livestream, the comments are scrolling at a frantic pace, with people shouting for someone to help her. They wonder how Su Rue could just run away after claiming to love her. It seems, for Zhao Yuqing, the end has arrived much sooner than expected. The hope in Zhao Yuqing's eyes flickers and dies, replaced by a surge of bitter resentment just as the monster prepares to strike. At the very moment it lunges, the red spider lily tattoo on her waist suddenly glows with an eerie, blood-colored light. Illusory red petals begin to bloom beneath her, and a cold, sickly sweet fragrance fills the air, which is never a good sign. The mutated poodle freezes mid-motion, as if sensing a scent far more dangerous than itself, and a hint of fear enters its crimson eyes. Zhao Yuqing slowly lifts her head, her pupils reflecting a vast sea of blooming blood-red flowers that radiate an indescribable chill. She asks why even he had to abandon her. Su Rue, having just reached the stairs, feels his entire body go stiff at her voice. He looks back to see the spider lilies beneath her swaying silently, their petals moving like living creatures as they reach out. The petals slowly coil around the beast's limbs. The once ferocious monster now trembles on the floor as if trapped in a nightmare. Leaning against the wall, Zhao Yuqing pulls herself up, the red floral patterns crawling over the wound on her shoulder. A strange, bloody flush returns to her pale face. In that moment, the livestream chat completely loses its collective mind. Viewers scream in the comments about her awakening and the flowers on her skin, but a second later, the screen abruptly cuts to black. We return to Qin Lai, who watches the darkened screen with a cold smile. The spider lily of the underworld has finally bloomed. It is a path from which there is no return, and he notes that Zhao Yuqing has chosen a very fitting destiny for herself. Outside, the world has descended into absolute chaos. The Red Moon's power is no longer a distant threat. It has arrived, and its energy is beginning to saturate everything. Inside the base, the energy descends upon them. Su Xiaodao and Jiang Xini let out simultaneous groans of intense pain. The lunar energy feels like boiling lava as it surges into their bodies. On Xiaodao's left arm, his tattoo begins to react. The image of the great deity Neza erupts in flames, while on his right arm, the third eye of Erlang Shun snaps open. Starlight radiates from him, while on Jiang Xini's back, the totem of the nine heavens maiden transforms into a divine domain. The light lifts her into the air, and her once cold demeanor is replaced by a presence that is holy and utterly untouchable. On his chest, the Panga tattoo on his jacket suddenly erupts with a blinding, dark gold light, releasing an ancient and vast energy. An absolute power, capable of crushing eternity, explodes outward from Qin Lai as a tearing sensation rips across his back. 9 deep dragon roars thunder through the depths of the air raid shelter as the 9 dragons pulling a coffin tattoo on his back begins to stir. Fueled by the Red Moon's energy, the 9 pitch-black dragons slowly emerge from his back, their massive bodies manifesting in the air. Their scales are cold and metallic, and their crimson eyes snap open as they drag an ancient black coffin, hovering ominously behind him. The scarlet chains on the black coffin tighten inch by inch, and an indescribable, forbidden pressure instantly sweeps through the entire underground fortress. Su Xiaodao turns pale and retreats several steps, while the 9 heavens maiden phantom behind Jiang Xini trembles slightly, which is quite telling. It seems they instinctively sense the danger. Meanwhile, the Dongfang Tai totem on Qin Lai's left arm ignites with a sun-like fire that could burn the world. On his right arm, the phantom of the great sage equaling heaven erupts with a battle spirit that defies all laws and heavens. Four supreme phantoms have awakened at once, and Qin Lai must move quickly to suppress the violent resonance between them. These four forbidden powers are simply too strong. At his current level, he cannot manifest them all simultaneously without paying a heavy price. Pengu provides raw strength, the 9 dragons govern suppression and burial, Dongfang controls fire, and the great sage rules combat. He must choose wisely. Just then, a violent impact echoes from the titanium alloy gates of the shelter, and we see the security monitors flickering with movement. Mutated boars from the deep mountains, driven by the scent of living flesh, are frantically ramming the entrance. The beasts have truly changed. Su Xiaodao grips a 3-pointed, double-edged spear condensed from his Erlangshan phantom, his eyes burning with a sudden, wild battle lust. Qin Lai twists his neck, his joints letting out a thunderous crackle, and decides it is time to go out and stretch his legs. He wants to see if these so-called apocalyptic beasts are even worthy of being served as a side dish for their next drink. Outside the shelter, a thick black mist swirls as dozens of mutated beasts continue their frantic assault on the reinforced titanium perimeter. Leading them is a mutated boar king, over 3 meters long and covered in black scales, whose every charge makes the very earth tremble. The side door of the shelter slowly grinds open, and Qin Lai, bare-chested and flanked by Xiaodao and Jiang Xini, strides out to meet them. As they step outside, the scent of fresh blood hits the air, and the mutated beasts instantly stop their assault, turning their crimson eyes toward our trio. The mutated boar king lets out a deafening roar and charges toward Qin Lai like a heavy tank, its massive body shaking the very ground beneath them. Su Xiaodao instinctively moves forward, shouting a warning about the beast's peak strength, but Qin Lai simply tells him to stay back. He stands his ground, cold and unmoving, even as the boar king's spear-like tusks come inches away from piercing through his chest. With no flashy movements, he simply raises his right hand and clenches it into a fist, silently calling upon the ancient power of Pengu. The Pengu totem on his chest erupts in a dark gold light, and the phantom of an ancient giant begins to coalesce around his tightening fist. He throws a single punch, and the air is compressed so violently it creates a piercing sonic boom, a display of raw, terrifying power. The blow lands squarely on the boar king's skull with a dull thud, sending a wave of overbearing energy straight through its hardened bone. The force shatters the beast's internal life force instantly. The multi-ton monster doesn't even have time to let out a final whimper. The massive body collapses like a pile of mud at his feet, a peak-level beast king, killed in a single strike. But he isn't finished yet. 9 low dragon roars echo from his back as the 9 dragons pulling a coffin phantom manifests, their dark eyes snapping open with ancient malice. As they drag the ancient black coffin forward, Qin Lai commands them to suppress the area, and the phantom coffin begins to vibrate with power. A silent, crushing pressure from the depths of the abyss sweeps over the forest, instantly heavy enough to stifle the very air itself. The lower-level mutated beasts have no hope of resisting. They are pressed into the dirt, their bones snapping under the unbearable weight. In just 10 seconds, the entire pack of dozens of beasts is wiped out, leaving Su Xiaodao staring in absolute, wide-eyed disbelief. He mutters that this is simply too ridiculous, while even the usually stoic Jiang Xini shows a flicker of shock in her cold eyes. Qin Lai offers no explanation. He simply walks to the fallen boar king and cuts open its skull to reveal a small, glowing red crystal. He looks at the energy core in his palm, the most vital currency of the apocalypse, and a small, satisfied smile plays on his lips. Their first harvest is officially in hand. As he places the core into his natal space, he can feel the dimension react to the new energy. The space trembles slightly, and though the expansion is faint, it is definitely growing, a far better start than he ever had in his previous life. Humanity would soon discover that these energy cores could do more than just boost and awaken strength. They could also empower special spatial totems. In the later stages of the apocalypse, these cores would even replace gold and currency to become the world's only universal trading resource. Qin Lai turns to Su Xiaodao, instructing him to dig out all the cores from these beasts and not to let the meat go to waste, as it can be purified and stored. Su Xiaodao perks up immediately, ready to get to work, but at that very moment, the sound of frantic footsteps and cries for help echo from the mountain road. A dozen disheveled men come scrambling toward the air raid shelter, screaming for their lives as they desperately try to outrun the shadows behind them. Chasing them are several mutated bloodblade mantises, creatures the size of leopards that move with terrifying, predatory speed. Qin Lai narrows his eyes and recognizes the man leading the group, Fatty Lu, a contractor who once managed the exterior construction of the black market base. In his previous life, this group had kicked him while he was down, even pushing him toward the beast just to buy themselves a few extra seconds. Fatty Lu screams out, begging Boss Qin to let them in to hide, pleading that since they are all from Jiangzhou, he shouldn't just watch them die. Qin Lai stands his ground, watching them with a gaze as cold as ice. The irony of the situation is certainly not lost on him. A chill flashes through his eyes as he wonders why they didn't care about being fellow citizens when they betrayed him in the past. Fatty Lu is stunned. The man has no idea what Qin Lai is talking about, of course, but he can read the look in his eyes. It isn't the look of a savior, but of a judge. Slowly raising his right hand, Qin Lai calmly states that his shelter doesn't take out the trash, and with a simple snap of his fingers, the defense system activates. The alloy walls of the shelter instantly erupt with a terrifying high-voltage discharge, blasting the lead Bloodblade mantises back with millions of volts. Fatty Lu collapses in terror, stammering apologies and begging for mercy, though he likely doesn't even know what he's apologizing for. Qin Lai doesn't even look at him. While he won't actively hunt the innocent, he feels no obligation to save his enemies or the wicked. He turns and walks back into the shelter as the heavy alloy doors slowly grind shut, leaving the screams outside to be swallowed by the black mist. By the third day of the red moon, the outside world has descended into a living hell, with the center of Yun City reduced to a graveyard of rusted cars and ruins. Stray cats and dogs, now the size of bulls, hunt survivors in packs through the streets. It is a grim scene, to say the very least. Yet inside the black market shelter, the rich aroma of a beef hot pot wafts through the air as Su Xiaodao eats until his face is covered in oil. Su Xiaodao remarks that if every day were like this, the apocalypse wouldn't be so bad. Jiang Sini just glares at him, suggesting he go outside and try it. The boy wisely shuts his mouth. Qin Lai takes a sip of his ice-cold beer and leans back, but at that moment, a piercing alarm suddenly fills the room. The system warns that a massive heat signature is approaching the perimeter. Qin Lai taps the screen, and we see the giant monitors flicker to life. On the mountain road about a kilometer away, a dense, dark crowd is surging toward them. There are at least 500 or 600 people in total. These aren't just refugees. They are armed to the teeth with machetes, steel pipes, and a clear sense of violent purpose. It seems these dogs still haven't given up on targeting Jiang Sini. Qin Lai simply smiles, telling her not to worry about the millions he spent on defense. He notes that if he spent that much, he should at least get to hear the system in action. Outside, Long Hu waits for a response that never comes. Infuriated by the silence, he screams that since they want to play hardball, his men should just blow the damn doors open. 3 rockets are launched, trailing plumes of fire as they scream through the air toward the shelter's entrance. A series of thunderous explosions rocks the night sky. The thugs of the Azure Dragon Society immediately erupt into cheers at the display of power. They laugh, mocking the so-called Doomsday Fortress as nothing more than a tin can in front of their leader, Long Hu. However, as the smoke clears, the laughter dies on their lips. The silver-gray alloy doors are revealed once more, gleaming under the moonlight. The entrance stands tall and defiant, without so much as a single visible dent. A grim-faced Long Hu orders his men to keep firing. But right then, the metal armor plates above the walls slide open with a mechanical hiss, revealing 12 hidden compartments. 12 cold, 6-barreled Gatling guns rise from the shadows, their black muzzles locking onto the dense crowd below with clinical precision. Watching the monitors, Qin Lai holds his glass and calmly decides to give them exactly one warning. The external broadcast booms across the valley. The voice announces that this is the private territory of the Blackstone base, and they must leave immediately or face the consequences. Long Hu scoffs, declaring that he is the only law now, and orders a charge. Qin Lai sets down his glass and gives the command to fire. A second later, all 12 Gatling guns roar to life simultaneously, weaving large-caliber armor-piercing rounds into a terrifying tapestry of lead. A metal storm sweeps the mountain road, lighting up the night as the Azure Dragon thugs are mowed down in rows within mere seconds. Within minutes, the area outside the shelter is filled with agonizing screams. Over 200 thugs have lost their ability to fight, while the survivors scramble to retreat. Inside the monitoring room, Qin Lai watches with an expressionless face. He knows that some people simply aren't worth saving. With a calm motion, he presses the stop button. Outside, the Azure Dragon Society, which originally numbered 500 or 600, has been cut in half. Only about half of them remain standing on the blood-stained mountain road. Long Hu stands up, drenched in blood and swearing that he will skin Qin Lai alive. His entire body is now covered in a thick layer of crimson spiritual energy. As an S-rank blood python awakened, his vitality and defensive power are incredibly formidable. To be honest, ordinary firepower would have a hard time truly killing him. He orders the other awakened to start digging, vowing that if he doesn't kill everyone inside today, he doesn't deserve to be called a man. Several lackeys with pangolin tattoos immediately activate their abilities, frantically clawing at the ground. Qin Lai watches the monitors with a cold, detached gaze. Seeing their stubbornness, he realizes they've chosen death. He stands up and tells Xiaodao and Sini to watch the house while he goes out to clean up the trash. The massive alloy doors slowly groan open. Qin Lai walks out of the shelter entirely alone, and Long Hu sneers, thinking his target has finally come out to die. He orders his men to charge. Seeing that Chin Lai is by himself, the remaining 200 thugs find their courage once more and surge forward. They raise their weapons and rush him. Chin Lai simply stands his ground, slowly lifting his left leg as the totem of the Eastern Emperor Tai begins to glow. A blinding dark gold light erupts, carrying a terrifying heat that feels as though it could incinerate the world and melt everything in its path. With Chin Lai at the center, the true solar fire explodes outward. He slams his foot onto the ground, and a golden sea of fire sweeps out like a tidal wave. The dozens of thugs at the very front are instantly blown away the moment they make contact with the golden flames. It is a display of absolute power. The ground is scorched black, and steel weapons melt into liquid iron instantly. The terrifying temperature forces everyone else to retreat in a blind panic. They don't even have the right to stand near him. With just a single strike, the morale of the 200 thugs completely collapses. Soon, only Long Hu is left standing alone. His legs give way, and with a heavy thud, he falls to his knees, trembling as he calls Chin Lai a monster. He asks what kind of creature Chin Lai actually is. Our protagonist walks toward him step by step, noting that it's a bit late to start feeling afraid now. Long Hu watches him approach, his mental defenses shattering completely. He mutters that it's impossible, believing that as an S-rank awakened, he shouldn't lose. A flash of madness crosses his eyes. He suddenly bites the tip of his tongue, preparing to spit out a mouthful of essence blood for one last desperate move. As the blood sprays onto the blood python tattoo on his chest, a roar that sounds nothing like a human erupts, and Long Hu's body begins to horribly distort. His limbs stretch violently, and his skin is rapidly covered in scales, until he transforms into a terrifying blood python over 20 meters long and as thick as a water tank. This is the complete awakening of an S-rank totem. Vowing to swallow his enemy whole, the python opens a maw large enough to gulp down an entire car. He lunges toward Chin Lai with a foul wind, the force of his breath sucking in loose stones from the ground. But size, as we are about to see, isn't everything. Chin Lai simply sneers at the display. He steps forward firmly with his right leg, calling upon the unyielding battle spirit of the great sage, Sun Wukong. The sage totem on his leg erupts with golden light, releasing a terrifying, rebellious aura that seems to press down on the very heavens and earth. In the next moment, Chin Lai's body is coated in a brilliant golden radiance. His blood boils like a rising dragon as a majestic figure begins to manifest. A phantom of the great sage, clad in golden chainmail and a phoenix feather cap, slowly emerges behind him. When those golden eyes snap open, it feels as though a rift has been torn through the dark fog covering the sky. As the blood python strikes, Chin Lai doesn't retreat. He meets the attack head-on. He launches himself into the air like a cannonball, slamming his foot onto the python's lower jaw and forcing that massive head to jerk backward. The blood python lets out a pained shriek, its enormous body thrashing wildly in an attempt to shake him off. To be honest, it's a futile effort. Chin Lai stands firmly atop its head, his feet planted as if nailed to a mountain. Enraged, the python swings its massive tail in a devastating horizontal sweep. The blow shatters every boulder and tree in its path. Chin Lai merely raises his right hand, and the phantom of the great sage behind him mirrors the gesture. Out of thin air, a long staff burning with golden battle intent appears. This is the legendary golden cudgel, a weapon that commands the very atmosphere. Ancient patterns glow inch by inch along the staff as Chin Lai grips the phantom weapon. An indescribable, violent fighting spirit surges through the air. With a command to bring the beast down, he swings the staff in a wide arc. The sheer power of the movement creates a shockwave that rattles the surroundings. The phantom staff collides violently with the python's tail. The air itself seems to explode, sending a gale-force shockwave tearing through the mountain forest. The python's tail, which could easily crush an armored vehicle, sees its scales shatter under the force of the blow, and the massive beast is sent flying backward. Fear finally flickers in the eyes of the serpent that was once Long Hu. He stammers that it's impossible, wondering how an S-rank like himself could be suppressed. Chin Lai stands atop the creature's head, looking down with a gaze as cold as ice. He tells him quite simply that it is because of who he truly is. He declares that a so-called S-rank is nothing before a forbidden totem. As his voice falls, Chin Lai grips the golden cudgel with both hands. He raises the weapon high, and the phantom of the great sage behind him suddenly surges in size, growing 10 meters taller in an instant. It reaches 30 meters, then 50, finally becoming a golden war avatar that stands between heaven and earth, treading upon the dark fog below. With the red moon above, the golden cudgel descends like a divine pillar, carrying a terrifying power meant to crush mountains as it aims for the python's heart. The strike lands with a world-shaking roar. As the staff hits, the entire mountain forest seems to jump, and the very earth beneath them shatters. Rocks fly into the sky as the blood python's massive body is smashed directly into the ground, its scales exploding inch by inch at the point of impact. The terrifying battle force travels through its skeleton, shattering every ounce of life within its body. We see the python's pupils contract violently. Its enormous frame twitches a few times before finally going completely still. The mountain's dark fog is forced away by the sheer shockwave of the blow. Qinlai puts away the phantom staff and lands steadily on the ground. Behind him, the majestic image of the great sage slowly begins to dissipate. Only a faint golden light remains on his right leg totem. Long Hu, an S-rank awakener, has been slain with a single strike. To be honest, it wasn't even close. Using his fingers like a blade, he cuts open the python's skull and retrieves a core emitting a deep red light. It is a high-quality energy crystal. An S-rank totem crystal is a rare find, and it will serve his purposes well. He stores it in his personal space and turns back toward the air raid shelter. Behind him, the defeated remnants of the enemy force dare not even lift their heads. Along the way, he collects hundreds of smaller crystals from the battlefield. Most are only D rank, but the sheer quantity is what matters here. As the energy from these crystals pours into his personal space, things begin to change. He can clearly feel the dimensions of his space expanding, and his own source power becomes significantly richer. But there is a greater surprise waiting. As his strength grows, the 9 dragons pulling the coffin totem on his back becomes more vivid, and the ancient seals on the black coffin begin to react. The first of the 9 seals actually shows signs of loosening. He closes his eyes, feeling the obscure information being transmitted from the dragon totem. It turns out the 9 dragons totem isn't just for suppression. Its truly terrifying power lies in its ability to devour everything in its path. It can consume beast crystals, enemy totems, and any convertible energy, feeding that power back into his own body to strengthen his very foundation. This incredible ability is known as the Coffin Devourer, and it is only the beginning of what this forbidden power can truly do. However, the first chain has not been completely unsealed yet. To truly unlock the Devourer's power, he still needs a much higher level beast core to act as a key, at least a grade 5 core. A grade 5 core, he muses as he opens his eyes. A faint smile plays on his lips. He remembers that in his previous life, shortly after the Red Moon descended, a grade 5 beast appeared in the East Sea. That creature nearly destroyed all of Jiangzhou. In this life, he decides that its core will belong to him. Satisfied, he turns and walks back into the air raid shelter. The heavy doors slowly close, sealing away the slaughter of the outside world. Su Xiaodao rushes to meet him. His eyes are filled with fanaticism as he tells Qinlai that his power is simply beyond belief. Nearby, Jiang Sini hands him a warm towel. Her beautiful eyes sparkle with admiration as she tells him he's worked hard and that the hot pot is still warm. He wipes his hands and sits on the sofa, picking up a piece of Wagyu beef. Meanwhile, 500 meters beneath Kyoto, the atmosphere in the Supreme Military Command Center is heavy. The tension has reached its breaking point. Reports flood in. The third line of defense in the Eastern Theater has collapsed, and 3 grade 4 beasts have broken through. In the south, an abnormal tsunami suggests deep-sea giants are making landfall. Worse yet, conventional weapons are becoming useless against grade 3 beasts and above. The military's awakened forces are suffering heavy casualties. Each piece of bad news hits the room like a sledgehammer to the heart. Standing before a massive electronic sand table, the commander closes his eyes in pain. This is the highest leader of the Dragon Country's military, Commander Long. Only 3 days after the Red Moon's arrival, the modern civilization humanity was so proud of has been largely devastated. Even the military is finding it increasingly difficult to stand against these terrifying mutated giants. He wonders if this is truly the end of their kind. Just then, an intelligence monitoring officer suddenly stands up and calls out to the commander. He urges him to look at the footage just sent back by a high-altitude stealth drone. On the large screen, the image zooms in rapidly. We see a mountain fortress encased in titanium alloy walls. Outside the fortress gates, the forest has been torn apart by fire and explosions. The ground is littered with vehicles and weapons left behind by the fleeing Azure Dragon Society thugs. And in the center of the frame, a shirtless young man stands alone on the mountain road. Before him lies a terrifying blood python, 20 meters long and thick as a water vat, its entire body covered in dark red scales. The massive serpent's eyes are filled with madness, its colossal body coiled among the mountain trees like a monster crawling out from the abyss. This is an S-rank awakened in beast form. An officer asks the commander if they should immediately deploy nearby troops for support. But the commander knows it's too late. The distance is too great. By the time their people arrive, the battle will have long since ended. However, in the next second, the entire command center falls into a deathly silence. On the screen, the young man's right leg suddenly erupts. A brilliant golden light bursts forth, and a defiant, golden warrior phantom roars into existence behind him. To be honest, it is a sight beyond words. The phantom is clad in golden chainmail, wearing a phoenix feathered cap, holding a golden staff that seems to suppress the very void itself. Even through the drone footage, everyone feels a violent, world-sweeping battle intent. We see the seasoned officers frozen in shock. The commander asks what this is, demanding information, but no one answers. The battle on the screen has already reached its most shocking moment. The young man steps onto the blood python's path, his hands gripping the air as if holding the golden staff. Behind him, the golden warrior phantom grows. It expands to 10 meters, 30 meters, then 50, finally transforming into a terrifying entity nearly as high as the mountain peaks. In the next instant, the golden staff aims at the python's vital point and slams down with a thunderous roar. It is a truly devastating blow. Even through the screen, they see the entire forest tremble, the ground cracks, and debris soars into the sky as the impact ripples outward. That S-rank blood python, whose defenses even heavy artillery might not breach, is smashed into the ground by this single strike. The python's massive body twitches violently before falling completely still. The entire command center remains utterly speechless for a long time. It takes several seconds before someone finally manages to swallow hard, killing an S-rank beast form awakened in one hit. How is that possible? They wonder what rank of awakened he could possibly be. Finally, an officer announces they have identified the target, Qin Lai, 22 years old. He was the original heir to the Qin group in Jiangzhou. 20 days before the Red Moon descended, he suddenly sold all his assets. He used the money to buy the Blackstone base on the outskirts of Jiangzhou and purchased massive amounts of supplies. At the same time, he took 2 companions. They entered a tattoo parlor and stayed for 7 consecutive days to complete large-scale tattoos. The day before the Red Moon, he officially moved in. The command center falls silent once more as everyone realizes the same thing. This young man named Qin Lai knew exactly what was coming. It seems he knew the apocalypse was coming all along. The commander orders a deep dive into the 2 people by his side as well. Qin Lai is immediately classified as a top-tier strategic target, and a special envoy is dispatched to Jiangzhou following the Azure Dragon Society's fall. The next morning, we find Qin Lai in the bunker's climate-controlled pool, eyes closed as he absorbs a massive surge of essence and energy. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shatters the silence. Su Xiaodao rushes to the poolside, shouting that more fools have arrived at their doorstep. He hands over a surveillance tablet, noting that while there are only a few dozen intruders this time, the leader looks familiar. Qin Lai takes the tablet and glances at the screen, a cold smile touching his lips. We see the monitor showing the approaching group. Dozens of thugs in tattered clothes, wielding crude weapons, are trekking up the mountain path toward the air raid shelter. Despite the filth and haggard appearance, Qin Lai recognizes the man in front instantly, Su Rue, the son of Jiangzhou's richest man. This was his rival from a past life. On the day the Red Moon descended, Su Rue was live-streaming when a mutant dog terrified him. To be honest, he was a pathetic sight then, yet he somehow survived the early apocalypse thanks to a Cerberus tattoo on his back. With the city center now a playground for monsters and his villa leveled, he survived by sacrificing dozens of his own bodyguards. He knows perfectly well that the only truly safe place in all of Jiangzhou is Qin Lai's deep mountain bunker. And so, he has crawled here like a stray dog. Su Rue stops 50 meters from the entrance and points directly at the camera. He lets out a hysterical roar, his voice echoing through the trees as he calls out to the man hiding inside. He asks if Qin Lai really thinks he's safe in that turtle shell, boasting that he has awakened the power of the Hellhound. Claiming to be a true powerhouse now, he declares he will smash the door down and seize every last bit of the supplies. Watching Su Rue scream like a clown on the screen, Qin Lai stands up from the pool and casually dries himself with a towel. It seems a simple black-grade totem has given the man quite an ego. Xiaodao offers to go out and settle the matter. But Qin Lai refuses. He intends to settle this grudge from his past life personally. He gives the order to open the gates. With a heavy metallic click, the massive alloy doors slowly grind open, and Qin Lai steps out alone to face his old enemy. Qin Lai steps out and scoffs, asking if Su Rue really thinks he can seize the supplies with nothing but a few dozen pathetic thugs. He glances at the trembling rioters behind the rich air with pure disdain, telling him that one person is more than enough to handle them. Su Rue sneers and tells him to look at who he brought along. The crowd parts as a slender figure emerges slowly from the dark mist. She wears a blood-stained red dress, her skin pale and her features as delicate as ever, though her eyes now hold a strange, demonic glint. On her exposed waist, a blood-red equinox flower tattoo slowly blooms, while translucent red petals begin to float behind her back. The floral scent fills the air, so beautiful it makes one's skin crawl. It is Zhao Yuqing, and it seems she didn't die after all. Not only is she alive, but she has awakened a yellow spring equinox flower totem. The thugs around her watch with dazed, glazed expressions. Some even fall to their knees, crawling toward her like lost souls. Yuqing gently raises her hand as a blood-colored vine drops from her fingertips. The vine wraps around a thug's neck, yet instead of struggling, the man wears a look of pure, obsessive ecstasy. A second later, his face turns ashen gray as his life force is drained away, and an equinox flower blooms directly from his chest. Yuqing narrows her eyes in comfort as a hint of color returns to her pale face, a truly chilling sight, to be honest. Su Rue stands behind her with a cold, mocking smile, asking Qin Lai if he ever expected his former flame to awaken such power. He mocks Qin Lai's previous arrogance, revealing that Yuqing is now an A-rank mental-type awakened user. He boasts that her fragrance can control over a dozen awakened individuals at once, making her a formidable weapon. The villain wants to see if Qin Lai can actually bring himself to strike the woman he once loved so dearly. Yuqing chuckles softly and walks toward him, a blood-red flower blooming beneath her feet with every single step she takes. As the scent grows thicker, the mist suddenly clears, and we see the world around Qin Lai begin to shift and warp. He finds himself back in his past life, under a blood moon amidst a beast tide, lying bloodied and broken in the ruins. While a three-headed hound closes in, Yuqing kneels beside him, weeping piteously and begging for his forgiveness. She sobs that she never should have left him or trusted Su Rue, wishing they could start everything over again. She promises she will stay by his side forever, reaching out to touch his face with a voice so tender it carries the weight of heartbreaking memories. She begs Qin Lai to forgive her, but as he watches her quietly, a cold smile suddenly spreads across his face. He tells Zhao Yuqing that her illusion is far too fake. Immediately, the expression on the kneeling, weeping woman freezes in place. Qin Lai takes a single step forward, and with a thunderous roar, the phantom of the 9 dragons pulling the coffin surges behind him, their crimson eyes snapping open. The ancient black coffin hovers behind him as its crimson chains vibrate, releasing a vast, forbidden pressure that descends from the heavens. The surrounding ruins, the blood moon, and the sobbing Yuqing all begin to shatter like a mirror, piece by agonizing piece. Reality returns as Yuqing turns deathly pale, stumbling back a step while a thin trail of blood leaks from the corner of her mouth. The phantom of the equinox flower behind her trembles violently as its petals wither and fall. She stares at him, unable to believe her eyes. She stammers that it's impossible, claiming her fragrance should have dragged out his deepest obsessions. How could he have no reaction at all? Qin Lai simply asks if she truly thinks she's worthy of being his obsession. At those words, the last bit of color drains from Yuqing's face. That statement cuts deeper than any physical attack could. She bites her lip, a flicker of genuine panic finally appearing in her eyes. She tries a different tactic, insisting that he must have loved her once, and that he's only acting this way because he still hates her. With tears welling in her eyes, she looks at him piteously, admitting she made mistakes but claiming she didn't know the apocalypse was coming. She explains that she thought he had truly gone mad back then, and then she makes her real move, pleading with him for a chance. She promises that if he lets her into the shelter, she will return to his side. After all, as an A-rank awakened, she is quite the asset. She offers to control the other survivors for him, insisting she is useful, which is a rather bold career pivot, to be honest. Su Rue is stunned, calling her a traitorous snake and reminding her that she just promised to help him kill Qin Lai. Yuqing snaps back at him to shut up, blaming him for humiliating Qin Lai on the livestream and forcing her to watch. She screams that it's his fault she ended up like this, reminding him that he didn't even look back at her when he was busy running away. She demands to know what right he has to judge her, leaving Su Rue trembling with a mixture of pure, unadulterated rage. As we watch them turn on each other like rabid dogs, Qin Lai feels nothing but a sense of hollow boredom. It's almost laughable that these two caused his death in his past life. Yuqing cries out that she was wrong, truly wrong, and begs him for just one more chance to make things right. She reaches out to grab his wrist, but before she can even make contact, an invisible pressure erupts and sends her flying backward. Qin Lai looks down at her with a gaze as cold as ice, calmly noting that she isn't actually regretful, she has simply realized something. She has realized that Su Rue can no longer protect her, and that Qin Lai is the stronger man. At those words, Yuqing's tears freeze in her eyes. He raises his right hand, and behind him, the phantom black coffin slowly creaks open, allowing a single, pitch-black chain to slither out from the darkness. In an instant, the chain coils around the equinox flower totem on Yuqing's waist. The flower is beautiful, certainly, but it's a pity it bloomed in the wrong place. As he speaks, the black chains suddenly tighten, and Yuqing lets out a scream of pure agony as the power begins to crush her. The sea of blood-red flowers behind her collapses into nothingness, their petals withering in the air as the 9 dragons pulling the coffin forcibly suppresses her totem's power. The crimson glow in her eyes fades instantly, and she collapses to the ground, looking as though every ounce of strength has been drained from her body. She stares at him in utter despair, realizing that her power has been completely sealed, and stammers that he might as well just kill her. Qin Lai simply replies that she isn't even worthy of him striking a second time. Meanwhile, Su Rue watches the powerless Yuqing without a shred of pity. Instead, he is filled with a bitter, resentful rage, calling her a useless waste of space for failing to even charm a single man. Yuqing looks at him in complete disbelief, unable to comprehend the venom in Su Rue's voice as he turns his anger toward her. Su Rue kicks the ground beside her and roars that if it weren't for her being such a jinx, he wouldn't be in this pathetic situation. With those words, the very last of Yuqing's illusions about their relationship are shattered into 1,000 pieces. To be honest, the scene is quite pathetic. The apocalypse doesn't change people, it simply digs out the filthiest parts of the human heart ahead of schedule. Qin Lai turns his gaze towards Su Rue, declaring that the farce is over and it's finally time to settle their own personal debt. The arrogant smirk on Su Rue's face vanishes, replaced by a fear he can no longer hide as he realizes his prized hellhound is nothing in Qin Lai's presence. He screams that it's impossible, desperately clinging to the delusion that as an A rank awakened, he should be invincible. Su Rue has completely lost her mind, letting out a beast-like roar toward the sky as the clothes on her back instantly explode. A phantom three-headed hound, over 5 meters long and wreathed in dark flames, emerges behind her as Su Rue's body begins to transform. Her muscles swell and bulge with terrifying power, her hands turning into sharp claws as a suffocating scent of sulfur fills the air. She lunges at Qin Lai with a scream of die, the central dog head opening its massive maw to blast a stream of searing black flames. Facing this seemingly grand A-rank display, Qin Lai doesn't even bother to dodge. To him, an A-rank in his presence is barely a stray dog. He takes a deep breath, feeling the terrifying blood energy within him, refined by the source power, begin to surge and roar. It flows like a mighty river, yet he doesn't even summon his totems, choosing instead to rely on nothing but pure, physical strength. He pulls his fist back like a coiled spring and then launches it forward like a cannonball, meeting the black flames head-on with a thunderous boom. The sheer force of his punch tears the black flames apart, and his fist slams directly into Su Rue's prized claws without any fancy tricks. A sickening crack echoes through the air as Su Rue's right arm snaps instantly, the powerful impact continuing its path of destruction. The momentum doesn't slow down for a second, slamming ruthlessly into her chest and sending her reeling. Su Rue clutches her chest, her eyes finally filling with a deep, primal fear as she realizes she is simply too weak. Qin Lai walks toward her step by step, looking down at her as she begins to beg, calling him young Master Qin and pleading for mercy. He looks at her without a single ripple of emotion, reminding her that in their past life, she was the one who pushed him into the beast tide. He notes that this time, he won't be pushing her into a swarm of monsters. For a moment, a flicker of hope crosses Su Rue's eyes. But that hope is short-lived, as he calmly adds that such a death would be far too easy for her. He slowly raises his hand. The phantom of the 9 dragons pulling the coffin appears, the black lid creaking open as a dark chain stabs into Su Rue's hellhound totem. Su Rue screams in agony as her totem tries to break free, only to be ruthlessly suppressed by the 9 black dragons until it begins to crack. With a final snap, her supernatural aura recedes like a tide, and her body rapidly shrinks back to its original, fragile state. She is left as a scarred, powerless ordinary person, wailing for Qin Lai to return the strength that he has just stripped away forever. Qin Lai looks down at her, noting that since she loved acting like a dog so much, from today on, she won't even be equal to one. The surrounding thugs watch the now powerless Su Rue, their eyes changing. In this wasteland, the weak have no dignity, and she is no exception. After all, Su Rue had used countless people as bait just to survive, and now, her karma has finally arrived as the screams begin to ring out. We see Qin Lai turn away, and before long, Su Rue's voice vanishes entirely, leaving nothing on the ground but a dim, single-pronged golden core. He casually stows it in his spatial storage, reflecting that the rival who pushed him to his death in his past life wasn't even worth his full strength now. Just then, a deafening roar of engines echoes from the sky, a mechanical buzzing that cuts through the air as fierce winds begin to howl. The black mist is swept away as he looks up to see 3 dark green military gunships circling directly above the air raid shelter. As the helicopters descend, the cabin doors slide open, and 2 rows of fully armed Special Forces soldiers jump down to secure the perimeter. With the area under guard, a high-ranking commander flanked by several bodyguards walks forward with a brisk, disciplined pace. The man introduces himself as Lei Zhan, the deputy commander of the Eastern region, sent here by the Supreme Command to pay a visit. Qin Lai acknowledges his hard work, noting that with beasts running rampant outside, their arrival is quite the feat. The fact that they found him proves the command center is still doing its best to maintain order, a sentiment that catches Lei Zhan off guard. A flicker of surprise crosses the commander's eyes. He expected a terrifyingly powerful awakened like Qin Lai to be arrogant or dismissive of the military. But Qin Lai knows that in this apocalypse, the military is the final shield for ordinary people. Without them holding the front, Jiangzhou would fall instantly. Lei Zhan takes a deep breath and explains that they witnessed the drone footage of him slaying the S-rank blood python. He admits that Qin Lai's power far exceeds anything the command center currently understands about the awakened system. Because of this, the Supreme Commander hopes to establish a high-level wartime cooperation with him, a partnership of equals. They aren't here to force a conscription or demand he hand over the Blackstone base, which is a surprisingly reasonable offer. They only hope that when the nation faces a major catastrophe, he might lend his hand within the scope of his abilities. Qin Lai agrees, causing Lei Zhan's eyes to light up with relief as he prepares to continue the discussion. However, Qin Lai makes it clear that he prefers to act alone and isn't suited for a conventional command structure. The Blackstone base can serve as an independent stronghold, while the military focuses on maintaining order and evacuating survivors. He offers to build a defensive line and provide intelligence, specifically taking responsibility for slaying high-level beasts. By sharing resources and information, they can achieve maximum efficiency, a proposal Lejean promises to relay to the Supreme Commander. Since they are now partners, Qin decides to offer a piece of intelligence. In 3 days, at 2 in the morning, the East China Sea will see its first massive wave of marine beasts, led by a level 5 ancient sea dragon and 100,000 monsters. If a heavy artillery defense isn't established in Jiangzhou, the city, and the entire eastern region will suffer a devastating blow. Lejean's face pales instantly, cold sweat soaking his back as he stares at Qin in utter disbelief. He searches for any sign of a joke, but he finds only a terrifying, steady calm. To be honest, that look alone is enough to convince him. When asked if the intel is reliable, Qin simply notes that he wouldn't gamble with the lives of 3 million people. Taking a deep breath, Lejean vows to report this immediately and mobilize every available force in the eastern region. In exchange, Qin requests heavy military equipment, high-precision lathes, and specialized alloy materials. He also asks for 10 automated naval-grade defense systems and a stockpile of thermobaric weapons. Quite the shopping list, really. He won't take them for free. In return, he promises to provide priority intelligence on all future high-level beast threats. Lejean notes these are strategic assets that require the Dragon Commander's approval, though he personally finds the trade more than fair. He thanks Qin for his willingness to cooperate, recognizing that this partnership might be their only hope. Qin tells him the military should hold the line for humanity, while he handles the monsters they aren't equipped to face. It is a simple matter of everyone doing their part, a sentiment Lejean promises to deliver to the very top. We see Qin watch the commander's helicopter depart, his gaze darkening as he looks toward the distant horizon. The core of that ancient sea dragon is the key to unlocking the first chain of the 9 dragons, and he intends to claim it in 3 days. Time passes in the blink of an eye, and over the next 3 days, the military proves they are men of their word as heavy transport helicopters arrive. The specialized naval defense systems and thermobaric weapons Qin requested are delivered to the shelter one by one. As he watches the helicopters land, he notices massive claw marks scarring their hulls. He knows that to get these supplies through monster-infested airspace, the military likely lost several of their ace pilots. Lejean sends word that the remaining strategic materials will be moved in batches, and Qin doesn't press him for more. With the world outside turned into a battlefield, delivering the first batch already shows great sincerity. He takes these supplies into his spatial storage, and the shelter's defense level skyrockets. At 2 in the morning on the 4th day, we find him in the monitoring room, sitting in a large leather chair with a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand. Suddenly, Su Xiaodao notices something odd. He points out the torrential rain falling outside, wondering why the water is pitch black. Qin takes a slow sip of his coffee, his gaze deepening. It has begun. At that exact moment, on the coastal defense line east of Jiangzhou, Lejean stands in his temporary command post, staring at a radar screen filled with a tsunami of red dots. Cold sweat begins to pour down his face as the reality sets in. Qin intelligence was terrifyingly accurate. The beasts of the East China Sea have made landfall. He gives the order to open fire along the entire line. They cannot let them reach the city center. 3 million survivors are counting on them. In an instant, the heavy artillery positions erupt with a deafening roar. Countless shells trail fire through the air, crashing into the coastline and lighting up the dark night like broad daylight. However, when the flares illuminate the sea, the frontline soldiers are struck by a wave of pure despair. Hundreds of thousands of mutated sea beasts are riding the waves toward them. There are giant crabs the size of armored cars and toxic, spine-covered amphibians. There are swarms of sea snakes moving with such speed that they weave through the artillery fire. In less than 10 minutes, the first defense line is completely torn to shreds. A frantic report reaches the commander. They can't hold on. There are simply too many monsters. Their lines are collapsing. Lejean draws his pistol, his eyes bloodshot, and issues a final command to the entire army. Even if they all die today, they must protect the people. But just as the military prepares for a final, desperate stand, the earth begins to tremble. An indescribable, terrifying pressure suddenly erupts from the depths of the ocean. The pressure sweeps in from the deep sea. Inside Jiangzhou, 3 million survivors hiding in ruins and basements simultaneously feel a sharp pain in their chests, as if a mountain is pressing down on their hearts, making even breathing a struggle. Lejean looks up at the distant night sky in despair, watching as the thick black mist is violently torn apart by a pair of massive bone wings. A terrifying dinosaur, over 100 meters long and shrouded in deep-sea ghost mist, slowly descends from the clouds. Its eyes glow like 2 massive red lanterns, radiating the cold breath of death. This is the level 5 beast king, the abyssal ancient dragon. In the early stages of the apocalypse, a level 5 beast is synonymous with invincibility, a disaster capable of easily leveling an entire city. The abyssal ancient dragon lets out a roar that shatters the clouds. It opens its abyss like maw, and a mass of dragon breath, black as ink, erupts and slams directly into the military's heavy artillery positions. Black flames instantly swallow everything for miles. The artillery positions are completely paralyzed. Jiangzhou is finished, or so it seems as despair spreads like a plague. Countless people close their eyes, waiting for death to arrive. But at that exact moment, inside the black market air raid shelter, Qinlai slowly sets down his coffee cup. On the screen, that 100-meter ancient dragon is flaunting its power amidst the black mist. There is no fear in his eyes. Instead, they flicker with a burning light. Su Xiaodao's face pales as he asks if Qinlai is really going out there. After all, that is a level 5 Beast King. Jiang Xini grabs his arm, insisting there is no need to take such a risk. Qinlai gently pats her hand, a wild, arrogant smile playing on his lips. He remarks that his 9-dragon coffin is still missing a key. He has set his sights on that big lizard's core. He turns toward the elevator, telling them to watch the house and brew a cup of tea. He promises to be back by the time the tea is warm. Above Jiangzhou, the abyssal ancient dragon continues to breathe its black dragon fire, tearing through the final defenses. Lei Zhan closes his eyes, waiting for the end. But then, a pillar of ink black light soars into the sky from the direction of the deep mountains outside the city. This black light isn't cold. It carries an indescribable sense of ancient majesty. The thick mist is forcibly ripped open. Lei Zhan snaps his eyes open, wondering what on earth is happening. 3 million survivors and the remaining soldiers all instinctively look toward the black market shelter. Under the gaze of the masses, a slender young man begins to walk upward along that pillar of black gold light. Step by step, he ascends into the high sky. He uses no flight equipment at all, simply treading on thin air as if an invisible staircase exists beneath his feet. It is indeed Mr. Qin. It is Qinlai. Lei Zhan trembles with excitement as we watch him rise. Behind him, the 9-dragon coffin tattoo begins to surge and fully unfurl. 9 pitch-black dragon shadows soar toward the heavens, their bodies stretching for hundreds of meters. Their crimson dragon eyes snap open simultaneously. They drag an ancient black coffin across the sky above Jiangzhou. Atop the coffin, crimson chains begin to vibrate slowly, humming with power. A supreme, ancient, and inviolable taboo pressure sweeps across the entirety of Jiangzhou like a massive tsunami. To be honest, it is a terrifying sight. Under this overwhelming pressure, the 100,000 mutated sea beasts below, who were just moments ago attacking frantically, let out cries of pure terror. They collapse to the ground in unison, shivering. It is Mr. Qin from the black market base. He has come to save Jiangzhou. Countless survivors lift their heads from the ruins, their eyes filled with the shock and awe of those who have just escaped certain death. Qinlai stands 1,000 meters up, facing the 100-meter-long abyssal ancient dragon. Before its massive frame, he looks as small as an ant, and yet the 9-dragon coffin behind him looks far more like a demon from the primordial era than the beast does. Feeling the provocation, the dragon's crimson eyes lock onto him with a roar. It opens its abyssal maw, and a mass of black dragon breath, 10 times larger than the previous one, hurtles toward him like a falling meteor. He considers this nothing more than a trivial trick. On his chest, the Pangu totem erupts with a light that pierces the sky, manifesting a colossal war shadow. The phantom of Pangu looms behind him, standing tall between heaven and earth, facing the whistling black dragon breath that screams toward him. Qinlai doesn't even bother to dodge. He slowly raises his right fist as the Pangu phantom on his chest releases a dull, thunderous boom. The power of the world splitter wraps around his knuckles. In the next second, he takes a single step forward and his fist collides with the dragon fire. At that instant, the entire sky looks as if it has been torn open. The black flames are forcibly ripped apart by the domineering strength of his strike. The fire is split into 2 massive waves that howl past his left and right sides. These waves crash into the ruins below, scorching the earth. They leave behind 2 charred trenches over 1,000 miles long. Yet Qinlai stands between the seas of fire, his body completely unmoved. Behind him, the Pangu phantom slowly lifts its head. Its originally blurred silhouette begins to grow increasingly solid, radiating a dark, golden light. The divine light spreads from the Pangu totem on his chest all the way to the phantom behind him. It seems the moment has finally arrived. He decides that it is now his turn to strike. With the power of Pangu, the world-splitting force begins to manifest. Qinlai swings his right hand down with sudden violence, and the Pangu phantom behind him mirrors the movement, swinging its colossal axe. A massive, dark gold blade of light, hundreds of meters long, tears through the mist as if it intends to split the entire night sky in 2. The abyssal ancient dragon senses the danger and feels a surge of shame, but it is already too late. The light slams into its indestructible wings. With a sickening crack, the massive wings shatter instantly. The dragon lets out a deafening wail of agony as its enormous body loses all balance. It falls toward the ground like a meteor. Qinlai gives it no room to breathe, stepping forward and transforming into a streak of dark gold light. He appears above the dragon in an instant, the Pangu phantom moving in perfect sync behind him. He clenches his hand into a fist. The phantom raises its world-splitting axe high with both hands. Below them, the abyssal ancient dragon struggles desperately to lift its head. Its crimson eyes are now filled with pure terror. Qinlai's voice is cold as he commands the beast to shatter, throwing a punch downward. The phantom's axe follows his lead, striking with a thunderous boom. The blow lands squarely on the center of the dragon's head. The terrifying power of the strike pours through the creature's hard skull and into its body. The earth trembles violently on the outskirts of Jiangzhou. A massive crater, dozens of meters deep, is carved into the ground as debris flies into the air. The dragon's enormous frame is buried in the pit. The light in its crimson eyes fades rapidly. Behind Qinlai, the Pangu phantom slowly begins to withdraw its overwhelming presence. The dark gold divine light dissipates bit by bit. He stands at the edge of the crater, the totem on his chest still glowing. The level 5 overlord is finished. The abyssal ancient dragon is dead. The battle ended so quickly that no one watching has even had time to process what they just saw. From the moment he appeared to the final blow of the giant phantom, less than 3 minutes have passed. The black mist clears as the moon emerges. He deactivates his divine form, returning to his normal size and landing steadily on the dragon's massive skull. To be honest, he looks quite calm. He uses his fingers like a blade to cut through the skull, extracting a core the size of a basketball that radiates a dense, black gold light. As he senses the vast, ocean-like power within the level 5 core, Qinlai tucks it into his personal space with a look of quiet satisfaction. Below him, the 100,000 sea beasts lose their king and collapse into chaos, retreating back to the ocean like a receding tide. Jiangzhou is saved. A wave of gratitude, as thunderous as a tsunami, erupts from the people as they cry out, thanking Mr. Qin for saving 3 million lives. The cheers echo through the night sky. Standing atop the dragon's skull with the black gold core in hand, he seems remarkably unmoved by the praise. He doesn't stop to soak in the glory, instead turning toward Lei Zhan and speaking with a calm that borders on the surreal. He tells the commander that if the Order's forces hadn't held the front line against the tide, the city might not have lasted until his arrival. As Lei Zhan pauses in surprise, Qinlai continues, reminding him that this victory wasn't won by a single man, but by everyone involved. He notes that the soldiers who fell on the front lines also saved this city. Lei Zhan's eyes redden, and the officers behind him bow their heads. After stowing the core away, he advises them to move survivors and repair the defenses quickly, as the retreat of the sea beasts is only temporary. He warns that the true disaster is still to come. Lei Zhan assures him that the Order will do everything in its power to keep Jiangzhou stable. Qinlai tells them to contact him immediately if another level 5 beast appears, promising to handle the high-level threats himself. Without further delay, a flash of black gold light erupts from his back, and he streaks through the air toward the black stone house as the gates slam shut. We return to the monitoring room, where he picks up his tea and takes a sip. It is, quite conveniently, still at the perfect temperature. Deep within the core power chamber of the black stone house, he sits cross-legged on a specialized platform, holding the glowing black gold core. The energy within this abyssal ancient dragon core is immense, hundreds of times more powerful than the S-rank blood python core he had before. If even the strongest military esper tried to swallow this, it would likely explode instantly. But Qinlai, of course, is a different matter entirely. Without a hint of hesitation, he presses the core to his chest and begins to circulate his origin power. Suddenly, a violent, icy energy erupts. The energy surges through his limbs like a catastrophic flood, causing black frost to form on his skin while his bones groan under the immense pressure. The beast's lingering will tries to resist, but he merely scoffs at the idea of a dead lizard fighting back. On his chest, the Pangu totem reacts. The phantom's eyes snap open, and a domineering, world-splitting force surges forth, instantly suppressing and crushing the black energy into submission. The energy transforms into a primal power that surges back into his body, while the 9 dragons pulling the coffin totem on his back begins to glow. The 9 black dragons seem to flow beneath his skin, and the first crimson chain on that ancient black coffin begins to tremble violently. A faint cracking sound echoes in the depths of his soul. Then, with a sudden snap, the first crimson chain finally breaks. An indescribable flood of black gold energy pours from the coffin. Before his eyes, a vision of an endless, suffocating darkness appears. In the deepest part of that void, the ancient black coffin creaks open just a sliver, and a surge of gray information rushes into his mind. The first lock of the 9 dragons pulling the coffin has been released, granting him a new, terrifying ability, the Coffin Devourer. This power refines and feeds his physical body, his personal space, and his 4 forbidden totems. In other words, the more he hunts, the stronger he becomes. As the abyssal dragon core is fully refined, his physical realm naturally breaks through to the peak of level 5. His personal space expands once more, but at the edge of that vast expanse, a region of pitch-black darkness suddenly emerges. It is a silent, dead, and unfathomable area that feels like the domain of the black coffin itself. He has a lingering premonition about this place. He senses that as the remaining chains are unlocked, this dark region will become something far more formidable than his current personal space. Qin slowly opens his eyes, his bones popping with the sound of rolling thunder. He finds the coffin devour ability quite satisfactory. From this moment on, every beast in the world is nothing more than fuel for his growth. The next morning, we find ourselves at the black market base. In the underground training field, he sits on the alloy floor and reflects on his progress after consuming the abyssal dragon core. His internal energy is now several times stronger than before, and the coffin devour ability has been fully integrated into his very being. Ordinary cores will now offer him very limited improvement. To continue his ascent, he must hunt higher-level beasts, level 4 or above. Su Xiaodao walks in, his eyes filled with a mix of admiration and eagerness to prove himself. To be honest, he's feeling a bit left behind. He mentions that since Qin killed the level 5 dragon alone, he and Xingyi barely had a chance to help. They don't want to become a burden. Jiang Xingyi approaches from the other side, dressed in a black combat suit with her long hair tied back, looking sharp and focused. With a rare look of determination, she admits she also needs real combat, as relying solely on cores to level up simply isn't enough. Without mastering true power, they would never survive. Qin watches them and nods, as this is exactly what he intended to say. Su Xiaodao's Erling Shun and Neza totems are both top-tier combat spirits. Meanwhile, Jiang Xingyi's Nine Heavens Maiden is an even more versatile force on the battlefield. She possesses high-level coordination for both offense and defense. Their potential is immense, but in this world, potential does not equal combat power. True experts are forged in the mountains of slaughtered beasts. Qin stands up and decides it's time to head out. Xiaodao's eyes light up, wondering where they are going. He taps the screen to open the military's shared map of the Jiangzhou area. Dense clusters of red dots are scattered across the city ruins and suburban forests. Among them, an industrial park in the southern suburbs of Jiangzhou glows with the most piercing red light. It is a sight that would give anyone pause. The military has marked it as a high-risk zone, suspected to be a level 4 beast nest. Qin points directly at that area, the south suburb industrial park. After the sea beasts retreated last night, a swarm of mutant beasts took over. Military drones captured footage showing at least 3 level 4 beasts inside. There are also a massive number of level 2 and level 3 beasts. Xiaodao grins, thinking it's a perfect spot. Plenty of monsters means plenty of experience. Xingyi looks at the map and calmly notes that the south suburb industrial park isn't far from the North District military camp. If the beasts there continue to spread, they will eventually threaten the evacuation routes for the survivors. It is a ticking time bomb, really. So, this trip serves 2 purposes. They get their training and help the military clear a hidden danger. Qin dials Lei Zhan's communication line. The screen flickers to life, showing Lei Zhan. He looks a bit more relaxed than he did last night, though the exhaustion still lingers deep in his eyes. He asks if Mr. Qin needs any military cooperation. Qin gets straight to the point, mentioning his plan to clear the south suburb industrial park. He informs him that he's heading to the level 4 nest. Lei Zhan is stunned for a moment, but his expression quickly shifts to one of intense focus. He explains that the area is exactly where they were about to request reinforcements. The park contains a large number of chemical warehouses. If the beasts destroy them, the resulting toxic gas would drift toward the North District camp. To be honest, that would be a total catastrophe. If Qin is willing to take action, the military can immediately provide real-time drone reconnaissance and a full regional lockdown. Qin agrees to let them handle the perimeter, but insists they stay out of the interior. He is taking Xiaodao and Xingyi in to sharpen their skills. Lei Zhan understands perfectly. The military will establish a quarantine line on the outskirts to ensure no beasts manage to escape the slaughter. Lei Zhan urges Mr. Qin to be extremely careful, but Qin simply notes that it's the beasts who should be worried. 10 minutes later, they are ready. The side gate of the Blackstone base slowly creaks open, and a modified black heavy-duty off-road vehicle rolls out from the underground garage. The chassis is covered in bulletproof armor, the tires are fitted with alloy anti-skid teeth, and a machine gun is mounted on the roof. Quite the ride. Xiaodao sits in the passenger seat, rubbing his hands in excitement, while Jiang Xingyi sits in the back, the phantom of her Xiantian sword flickering. Qin takes the driver's seat. To be honest, he seems the most composed of the 3 as they prepare to face the unknown. The morning mist hasn't fully cleared yet, revealing abandoned cars gnawed by beasts along the road. Occasionally, low-level creatures emerge from the shadows. Before they can even get close, the roof-mounted machine gun shreds them to pieces. Half an hour later, the south suburb industrial park appears before us. The once brightly lit modern park has been completely transformed into a monster's nest. It is a grim sight, to say the least. Factories have collapsed, pipes are twisted, and the air is thick with the pungent smell of chemicals. Xiaodao pushes the door open and jumps out. He asks Brother Lai how they should handle the attack. Qin gazes deep into the heart of the industrial park, weighing their options. He looks at the 2 of them and sets the ground rules for this little excursion. The level 2 and level 3 beasts are entirely their responsibility. As for the level 4 beasts, he will only provide support. Unless their lives are in immediate danger, he won't lift a finger to help. Xiaodao grins, as this is exactly what he wanted. As the words fall, the Erlang Shin totem on his right arm suddenly begins to glow. A phantom of the armored, blade-wielding deity slowly emerges behind him. Xiaodao prepares to activate his most potent ability, the Heavenly Eye. A golden light flashes on his forehead as the phantom eye slowly opens. Suddenly, the world around him becomes incredibly clear. He sees the movement paths of two mutant armored rhinos, the gaps in their scales, the contraction of their muscles, and their abdominal weaknesses. Everything is captured by the Heavenly Eye. Having found their flaws, he grips his three-pointed double-edged blade and prepares to strike. He stomps the ground, causing it to crack like a spiderweb, and Xiaodao shoots forward like an arrow released from a bow. He instantly closes in on the side of the first armored rhino, raising his blade high as golden light explodes from the edge. The blade falls with a deafening metallic crash. Xiaodao's expression shifts slightly. Although the strike was precise, the beast's hide is incredibly tough. The blade struck the gap in the armored rhino's scales precisely, yet it didn't shatter the defense as he had expected. These scales were far tougher than they looked. The blade only sank half an inch before being firmly wedged by the hard bone armor. This was bad. The first armored rhino didn't wait for him to recover. It spun around violently, its thick tail whistling through the air as it swept toward him. Xiaodao couldn't pull his blade free in time and had to let go. He retreated, but the massive tail brushed against his chest. Even a glancing blow from such a beast was enough to send him flying backward through the air. He slammed heavily into an abandoned tanker truck, the metal caving in with a loud crash. Xiaodao let out a muffled groan as a trickle of blood escaped his lips. He noted with a grimace that the creature was surprisingly sturdy. We see Qin Lai standing at a distance, making no move to intervene as the battle unfolds. Jiang Xingyi instinctively looked toward Qin Lai, but he remained perfectly calm, noting that the boy wouldn't die and needed to handle this himself. Xiaodao jumped down. He wiped the blood from his mouth, the excitement in his eyes burning even brighter than before. That strike had some real power behind it. The rhino let out a low growl. Its limbs suddenly glowed with power as its massive body charged like an armored tank, while another ironclad rhino closed in from the side. They were attempting to pin him down, attacking from the left and right in a coordinated pincer movement. Xiaodao stood his ground this time. He didn't rush in blindly again. The golden light of the Heavenly Eye on his forehead grew even brighter, and the world seemed to slow down before him. Every step the rhinos took, every shift of their scales, and every muscle contraction was captured with perfect clarity by his divine sight. As the first rhino reached him, its massive jaws snapped open with a foul, bloody stench. Xiaodao leaned back sharply, narrowly avoiding the bite. It was a dangerously close call, but he managed to dodge. At the same time, he kicked off the ground, sliding beneath the rhino's jaw into the shadows of its belly. The Heavenly Eye locked onto the third soft plate of the abdomen, the exact location of the heart. It was time for a decisive strike to end this. Xiaodao let out a fierce roar as the phantom of the deity behind him mirrored his movements, thrusting the three-pointed blade upward with immense force. The blade finally pierced through the soft armor, burying itself deep into the rhino's belly. The creature let out a piercing, agonizing scream of pain. Its massive body thrashed wildly, but Xiaodao gripped the handle with both arms, putting his full weight into the upward thrust to finish the job. A massive wound was torn open across the first rhino's abdomen, and its enormous body collapsed heavily to the ground. One down, one to go. But before Xiaodao could even catch his breath, the second armored rhino was already charging at his back. It didn't aim for a direct strike just yet. Instead of a direct strike, the beast shifted direction, charging violently toward a nearby half-collapsed chemical tower. Jiang Xingyi's expression shifted instantly. The beast was trying to crash. If that tower exploded, toxic gas would flood the entire industrial park in seconds. Seeing the danger, Xiaodao suddenly looked up, the golden light from his heavenly eye surging with intensity. He wasn't about to let it escape, shouting for the beast to stay right where it was. He gripped his three-pointed, double-edged blade with both hands. He thrust the weapon deep into the ground. Behind him, the phantom of the deity Erlang Shin solidified, and the third eye on the phantom's forehead snapped open as well. Two beams of golden light met in midair, instantly locking onto the second ironclad rhino. This was the Heavenly Eye Soul Lock, a technique that left no room for escape. The second ironclad rhino's massive body jerked violently, as if pinned to the spot by invisible chains. It began to struggle frantically, its strength failing against the divine bind. Its forehooves gouged deep furrows into the earth, yet it remained trapped by that golden light. Xiaodao's face quickly turned pale from the effort. This move was clearly draining his energy at an alarming rate. However, his eyes remained terrifyingly bright with excitement as he slowly lifted his head. He broke into a wide grin, declaring that this next strike would be the creature's end. High above, the black mist was forcibly torn apart by a golden radiance. A massive, spectral image of the three-pointed blade emerged from the clouds. It was a sight to behold, appearing as if the heavens themselves were intervening. The blade stretched dozens of meters long, shimmering with a sharp, celestial authority. The air in the industrial park seemed to freeze under the weight of its presence. Xiao Dao pulled his own blade from the ground and swung it down toward the trapped ironclad rhino with everything he had. It was the saint's heavenly strike. In the next heartbeat, the colossal blade in the sky came crashing down. The golden shadow descended like a judgment from above, striking the rhino's head with absolute force. The thick black armor shattered instantly. The massive beast was driven deep into the earth by the sheer pressure of the divine energy. The ground exploded, creating a crater dozens of meters long as debris flew into the air and dust billowed. As the golden light faded, we see the result. The level 4 ironclad rhino lay motionless in the deep pit, its life extinguished. Xiao Dao dropped to one knee, gasping for air as the exhaustion finally hit him. The heavenly eye on his forehead slowly closed, and the Erlang Shun totem on his right arm grew dim. Yet, despite the fatigue, he couldn't suppress his triumphant smile. He had done it, proving his strength in the heat of a desperate battle. Calling out to Qin Lai, he took a moment to recover before digging 2 level 4 golden cores out of the rhino's skulls. The moment the 2 level 4 cores touched his hand, the totem on Xiao Dao's right arm began to throb with a faint, pulsing heat. The phantom of the heavenly eye on his forehead flickered briefly. It was clear that after slaying 2 level 4 ironclad rhinos, his totem had reached its limit. The bottleneck of his power was finally beginning to loosen, but he didn't rush to absorb the golden cores. He had pushed his heavenly eye to the brink. Having exhausted his energy with the Saint's strike, his internal reserves were nearly dry. Forcing a breakthrough now wouldn't be progress, it would be suicide. Xiao Dao stuffed the 2 golden cores into his backpack with a wide grin, telling Qin Lai that he would wait until they returned to absorb them. Qin Lai nodded in agreement. But just then, a sharp, piercing shriek echoed from deep within the industrial park as a half-collapsed factory building exploded. A wave of dark green toxic mist surged out like a tide, and a toxic mist queen, nearly the size of a freight truck, crawled slowly from the ruins. Her 8 legs were like sharpened spears, and her abdomen constantly spewed corrosive venom. It was a sight that would make anyone reconsider their career choices. Wherever she passed, the steel pipes hissed and dissolved under her touch. As the level 4 toxic mist queen approached, Xiao Dao prepared to step forward. However, Qin Lai raised a hand to stop him, deciding this one belonged to Jiang Xingyi. Xiao Dao paused as Xingyi gripped the Xiantian divine sword. His 9 heavens mystic maiden totem was the perfect counter to toxic mist and corruption. This beast was exactly the opponent he needed to trigger his own breakthrough. With a cold, calm voice, Xingyi told the others to leave it to him. The toxic mist queen locked all 8 of her crimson eyes onto him instantly. In the next second, the queen's abdomen convulsed violently as she prepared to launch her primary attack. A boom echoed as the mystic maiden's pure jade domain expanded outward from Xingyi, creating a translucent white sanctuary against the encroaching rot. The moment the toxic mist hit the domain, it hissed and dissolved, purified into harmless white smoke. But the queen had more than just poison in her arsenal. She slammed her 8 legs into the ground. Suddenly, dozens of venom-soaked silk threads erupted from the ruins like high-speed projectiles. The webs lunged at Jiang Xingyi from every direction. He swung his sword to sever the threads in front of him, but the assault was relentless. More silk shot in from his flank. One thread grazed his forearm, instantly corroding his combat suit and leaving a jagged tear in the fabric. His skin began to turn a faint, sickly shade of black. Xiao Dao's expression darkened with worry, but Xingyi didn't even look back. He pressed his left hand over the wound as his totem glowed with a soft white light, forcing the toxins out. He calmly assured the others he was fine. He looked at the toxic mist queen with even colder eyes, realizing she wasn't just spraying poison. She was using the silk to lay a trap. Qin Lai nodded slightly, realizing that Jiang Xingyi's combat talent was even better than he had imagined as the toxic mist queen retreated back into the ruins. Within the wreckage, a massive amount of spider silk began to glow with an eerie green light. In a remarkably short time, she had turned the entire factory into a trap. It was a web of poison where a single wrong step would mean certain entanglement, but Xingyi simply closed his eyes as the 9 heavens mystic maiden totem appeared. At this moment, he didn't rush to strike, choosing instead to compress his purification domain into a tight 3-meter radius around his body. The domain was smaller now, but its purifying intensity was explosive. As he took a step forward, the glowing silk beneath his feet was instantly incinerated. With a second step and then a third, every place his foot landed saw the poisonous web purified into a clean, white circle. It was quite a methodical approach. Using the moonglide step, Xingyi's figure suddenly became ethereal, moving through the toxic web like a stray beam of moonlight. We see the queen's frustration growing. Her 8 eyes spun frantically, yet she remained unable to track his true position. In the next second, the queen lunged upward and backflipped through the air. She spat out a concentrated ball of venom so dense it was nearly liquid, hissing with a corrosive sound that seemed to eat the very air as it fell. Xingyi snapped his eyes open as the Xiantian divine sword erupted with a blinding light, unleashing a mystic light burst in one clean, white arc. The sword light sliced the venom ball right down the middle, sending the liquid crashing into 2 deep, smoking pits on either side of him. By then, Xingyi had already passed through the toxic rain to appear directly beneath the toxic mist queen, gripping his sword with both hands. He channeled every ounce of purification energy into the very edge of his blade, until it seemed the entire world contained nothing but that single white light. With the nine heavens gaze, the sword light soared upward, piercing through the massive body of the toxic mist queen with surgical precision. She let out a series of shrill, muffled cries as her 8 legs convulsed violently, but the purification power was already spreading through her wounds. It instantly incinerated her internal poison sacs, and the queen crashed heavily to the ground. To be honest, she never stood a chance once he got close. The dark green mist tried to spread, but the Mystic Maiden's domain suppressed it entirely. The level 4 toxic mist queen was dead. A dark green golden core rolled out from the creature's skull, and as Xingyi leaned down to pick it up, a flash of white light purified its surface. The moment the core touched his hand, the Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden behind him trembled slightly, sensing the immense power within the dark green sphere. Because this was the core of a toxic mist queen, it was heavily saturated with corruption, making any attempt to absorb it a very dangerous gamble. The backlash could cause severe injury or even pollute his totem. He tucked the core away and looked up at Qinlai, who gave a reassuring nod. Qinlai told him to keep it for now, promising to filter out the lingering pollution once they returned. Xingyi nodded softly in agreement, while Su Xiaodao watched, stunned. Xiaodao couldn't help but exclaim that Xingyi's sword strike was even more impressive than his own. As Xingyi sheathed the Xiantian divine sword, he remained humble. He simply remarked that every technique has its own purpose. Xiaodao immediately grinned, agreeing that such was definitely the case. Qinlai stepped forward, looking between the two of them, and asked if they understood where their recent performances had fallen short. He pointed out that the armored rhino had immense defense. Because Xiaodao struck with full force without testing it first, his blade ended up stuck. Had that tail swipe actually connected, he would have walked away with at least 3 broken ribs. It was a lesson he needed to remember. Turning to Xingyi, Qinlai noted that he relied too heavily on his purification domain. While it cleanses mist, spider silk, and terrain traps aren't purely toxic. He advised that when facing polluted beasts, one shouldn't just focus on the poison itself, but also on how the creature manipulates the battlefield. They understood. Qinlai then told them to gather the cores, noting that low-level ones stabilize one's realm, but high-level ones are a different story. Specifically, he warned them never to recklessly absorb a level 4 core on the battlefield. Xiaodao, naturally, wanted to know why. Xiaodao mentioned that his Erlang Shin totem felt like it was catching fire. Qinlai explained that was merely resonance, showing his bottleneck was loosening. However, these cores contain more than just energy. They hold the beast's lingering violent will and corruptive aura. Low-level cores are manageable. But with high-level cores, absorbing them without proper treatment leads to totem backlash, or, even worse, the permanent pollution of one's fate. Xingyi looked down at the toxic mist queen's core in his hand. Although he had purified the surface, a dark green mist still swirled within. He quickly grasped Qinlai's meaning. The core required a thorough filtering process before it could be safely used. Qinlai promised that once they were back, he would use his own methods to strip away the violent will and the corruptive aura for them. Only by leaving the purest totem energy behind could they ensure a stable breakthrough. Soon, we see them finishing their sweep of the industrial park. They collected hundreds of low-level cores and over 20 level 3 cores. It was quite a haul for a single afternoon's work. Among them were 3 level 4 cores. The queen's core went to Xingyi, while the 2 from the armored rhinos were set aside for the others. The level 4 core went to Su Xiaodao. Just then, a video call from Lei Zhan flickered to life, showing drone footage of the industrial park. Looking at the cleared park, he let out a visible sigh of relief. He thanked Mr. Qin, noting the beast nest in the south was officially neutralized. The chemical pollution risk to the North District camp was gone, and he thanked the 3 of them. Qinlai simply gave a small nod. He mentioned he also needed to take his companions out for real combat to level up. Lei Zhan paused, then gave a wry, slightly bitter smile. He told Mr. Qin he must be joking. To the military, that place was a high-risk death trap. Qinlai glanced over at Xiaodao and Xingyi. After the fierce battle, their auras were noticeably more solid than when they started. The trip was a success, so Qinlai spoke to Lei Zhan again. He told him that in the future, he could send the coordinates for any level 4 nests directly to them, provided it didn't interfere with their plans. They would handle it. Lei Zhan understood and promised to report this to Commander Long. Once the call ended, the air grew quiet. We see Qinlai looking at the dispersing black mist. The industrial park was just the start. Many more nests still surrounded Jiangzhou. For ordinary survivors, these were forbidden zones of death, but for our group, they were the ultimate training grounds. However, it wasn't the time to keep hunting. Xiaodao and Xingyi had pushed their limits, and their bottlenecks were finally loosening. It was time to turn those cores into true power. Back at the Blackstone base, Qinlai raised his right hand to begin the process. The 9 dragons' coffin on his back grew warm as his devouring technique activated. A dark phantom flickered behind him for a brief moment. Wisps of black mist were drawn out from the 3 level 4 cores. This was the lingering pollution and the violent will of the beasts. If an ordinary awakened tried to absorb these directly, they would have to endure the mental assault through sheer willpower alone. Survive, and your strength grows. Fail, and your totem backlashes. But to the Nine Dragons' coffin, this pollution was merely nourishment. The dark coffin shuddered slightly, swallowing the impurities whole. The 3 remaining cores now glowed with a much purer light. He handed the 2 armored rhino cores to Xiao Dao and gave the toxic Mist Queen's core to Xingyi. It was time for the breakthrough. Xiao Dao took his with a wide grin, thanking Brother Lai, while Xingyi offered his own quiet thanks. They were ready. A second later, both began absorbing the energy. Xiao Dao was the first to erupt, the Erlang Shin totem on his right arm glowing fiercely. The Erlang Shin totem seemed to come alive as a tiny crack opened in the center of Xiao Dao's forehead, revealing a golden light of destruction. A phantom of the celestial eye slowly opened, and behind him, the armored image of the god grew more solid. Meanwhile, Xingyi's transformation was even more striking. The toxic energy from the queen's core was being purified and absorbed bit by his 9 heavens maiden totem. The dark green energy turned into wisps of pure white light as it entered his body. To be honest, it was a beautiful sight for such a dangerous process. 6 wings of white energy unfurled behind him, and a divine sword radiating a bone-chilling frost began to manifest in his hands. Half an hour later, their combined auras surged violently. Xiao Dao was the first to open his eyes as his power climbed through the ranks of level 4. He shot past the early and middle stages, finally coming to a halt at the very peak of level 4. Xingyi's aura was also climbing steadily. The image of the 9 heavens maiden became fully realized, and he too reached the peak of level 4. Xiao Dao, unable to contain himself, punched the ground in excitement. The impact echoed through the base. Yes, he was definitely feeling the upgrade. As the dust settled, Xingyi opened his eyes. He wasn't quite as loud as Xiao Dao, but a clear flash of joy remained in his gaze. His purification domain had expanded threefold. If they encountered large-scale toxic mist or mental pollution again, he would be ready. He could now maintain a massive safe zone for the team. Qin Lai gave a satisfied nod, but just then, another call from Lei Zhan flickered onto the screen. We see Lei Zhan looking at the 3 of them with a shock he couldn't quite hide. He addressed Mr. Qin with newfound respect. He confirmed that the high-risk nest in the industrial park was officially cleared, which had significantly relieved the pressure on the North District camp. Commander Long had personally asked him to convey his gratitude. Once the call ended, Xiao Dao stretched his arms lazily. He asked if they were heading out to hunt more monsters tomorrow. Qin Lai looked at the national emergency alerts constantly refreshing on the screen. He spoke calmly, noting that Jiangzhou was stable for now. It was time to look toward the other war zones.